Hola,
Hola, nosotras somos
Lilies among Thorns. Today we have a guest, and I don't know how to say his name. Fran, introduce him.
Nicholas Cavazos. Thank you for hopping on here.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes,
How you guys doing?
we
Doing
are
great.
good. How are you, Nick?
I'm good. I just got a haircut. It was very needed, so I'm happy.
Oh, that's
Awesome.
good.
We have a little bit
Uh,
of a different setup today. So we're
Yes.
on Zoom today. We wanted to talk with Nick to see well actually Julia, how about you introduce the topic?
So today's topic is, about the struggles. Nick, what is the topic?
You're asking me what the topic is?
The guest.
It's because look, we had a different topic and we switched it last night, you guys, but it's okay. It's about like the nuclear family, right? It's being destroyed now. What we see in America right now, all the distortion, right? Is that the word? I'm trying to sound smart. But you know, all that stuff. Nick is gonna educate us today.
Yes,
So
we're going to talk
I'm
about
just
the
gonna
nuclear family, the destruction of feminism, what Catholic men want,
yes.
and Catholic women, why Catholic men are not dating modern women, all these different topics.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, thank you, Julie. Thank you, Nick. We do have a quote, since we always do a quote. So today's quote is going to be from Saint John Bosco. The quote is, "When family life is destroyed, the nation is destroyed." Very fitting for today's topic. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes. So, Nick, tell us more on this topic, you genius.
Well, I think that it's important to talk about the destruction of the nuclear family because I don't know about you, but it's pretty easy to see the destruction of Western civilization
Yeah.
unraveling in front of us. And
Mhm.
I don't know how many people see the, if you will, roots of where this stuff begins.
Mhm.
It's easy to point fingers and say, this political party does this political party does that, this candidate does this candidate does that. All of that, of course, can be true, but all of those things are really just effects of the greater cause that is the moral rot in civilization today. And so we have to sometimes go back to first principles. You know, that's kind of one of the tricks of philosophy is that you have to root yourself in first principles. First principles are kind of like a diving board or an anchor in which you can kind of tether yourself to. And so a first principle of any civilization is what is a civilization? It's a family. But
Mhm.
what is a civilization's family? It's composed of lots of families. And so you have to define what even is the family.
Yeah.
And that whole notion of what the family is has been grossly distorted because God's intention for mankind was there to be one man, one woman for life, and that their love would spill over in the production of children,
Yeah.
and that they would raise their children to glorify God. But today, the family is essentially whatever one wants to define it. It's kind of a hyper individualism gone mad, if you will.
Exactly.
And it's led to not only a lot of confusion, but also dissatisfaction amongst the youth. The
Mhm.
youth were promised. I don't know about you guys. I don't know much about your guys' backgrounds, but growing up for me, I remember the rise of what's been termed today as the new atheism. The new atheism with people like Richard Dawkins and stuff back in 2009, 10, 11, 12, that era. And basically, the premise was as secular as we can possibly get as a society, the more fulfilled we will be. And I think we're all recognizing that that is a big, crock of lies. It doesn't seem to actually go anywhere. And yeah, it's happy to talk with you guys about it because it's definitely important to kind of get back to some of these foundational truths if we're going to move forward as a society.
Exactly.
Right.
Thank you, Nick, too, for kind of laying it out, especially what the topic is going to be today and your interest in it. We want to know first a little bit about you because I realized that we didn't like introduce you to an extent. So tell us a little bit more about you, why this is important to you, if you studied it or whatever. So just tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, I mean, sh long story short, I'm essentially just a political commentator. I have a show called the Traditional Thomist where I talk about stuff on theology, religion, immigration, U.S. policy, all kinds of stuff like that. And I'm launching a show in about a month's time that's going to be called The American Nationalist, which is my going to be my full-time job, which I'm pretty excited about, which will just be mostly U.S. and some international politics and stuff like that. But the reason I'm interested in this is because a lot of times, again, young people with politics, it's a weird relationship. There's the young people who are like super into politics.
Yeah.
You guys live in LA, and so I jokingly say that there's protest culture over there. There's people who are unemployed and all they do is spend their time protesting other people rather than actually working and being a good American. And then you have people who are very apolitical. They just don't care at all. They're like, politics is drama. Leave me out of it. I hate when election time comes around because it's stressful,
Yeah.
right? There's those two extremes. And I'm not saying you have to be, I don't think you should be either. I think that there's a happy median. I think you need to know what's going on and root yourself in first principles without making politics your God. And so the reason I'm interested in this is because I do want to see America restored. I do want to see America healed. But we have to have tough conversations to get back to that point. And one of those tough conversations is, yeah, let's kind of cut the nonsense and actually talk about what is a family. Because what are we fighting for? What are we conserving? What are we actually trying to promote as a society? Because if you think about it, all of the different aspects of policy, foreign policy, domestic policy, what have you, it's all in some form or fashion going to be rooted in we want a better country for our families. But if we don't know what a family is or what the purpose of that is, then there's kind of no point.
Exactly. When everything's all distorted, like I was saying this in our chat yesterday, but like everything is just distorted. Like left is right now, up is down, girls are boys, men can be mothers, like mothers, all these different things that we see now that are literally destroying the family. Nick, where do you think it starts? What age demographic do you think it starts with? And if it is like the younger crowd, where do you see the younger crowd heading in? Do you think they're leaning more conservative or more liberal? Where do you think that's going, and who do you think it starts with?
Yeah, I think that the youth, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, are going to be some of the most politically divided generations of all time. It's interesting when you look at data that's been given out about basically like political affiliations by generation, you see, for the most part, the boomers, the Gen Xers, Gen Y to a degree, they're all fairly statistical noise, right? So what it means by that is like, yeah, generally men lean conservative, generally women lean liberal, but it's not, they're fairly close. They're fairly close overall. Like there's a good majority that's at least in the middle.
Mm.
Gen Y with the millennials, you do see a bit more of a hardcore left wing, swing.
Mm.
And again, I remember all of this growing up because it's like if you live near a college campus like I do, all of those youngsters at one point just thinking like, especially in the, advent of the Iraq War and the Afghan War and stuff like that back in 2006, 7, 8, 9, etc. They just thought Barack Obama was, the Black Messiah, right? He was here to save America from the evil George Bush, and they were really gung-ho in their liberalism. And then as a reaction, we have, my boy Trump, who really is like, okay, the society's gotten really off kilter. We need to get back to a more sane place. But my generation has grown up seeing kind of the degeneracy of the left. If you think about it, this last generation, the millennials, they were really a kind of a dynamic generation when it came to shaping the United States of America. I mean, they pushed for homosexuality in the context of quote unquote marriage, in the context of forcing companies to, do baked goods and photo goods and wedding venues and stuff for them. They saw the introduction of all of the different woke elements when it came to race politics. Barack Obama, as an example, he can't get away with this. He was by far the most racially divisive president we've arguably ever had, at least in the modern era, because when you look at the data, again, race was not considered a very big subject for the most part until 2014. Well, what happened in 2014? You saw the Ferguson riots that took place where um, there was an unarmed black man who was killed by a cop, right? And it sparked the whole BLM movement. And of course, that trajectory landed in the 2020 summer of love, quote unquote. From there, though, it's led my generation to be super politically divided, particularly along gender lines. Men are extremely conservative, extremely right wing, not the right wing of yesteryear, but the right wing of almost 100 years ago. The conversations I'm having with lots of young men is they're basically in their mindset wanting to return to like the 1880s in their conservatism, something like that. And then the women, by contrast, are extremely progressive.
Yeah.
They're extremely progressive. They're very progressive when it comes to economics like communism. They're very progressive when it comes to their social beliefs around gender, especially. And because of this, we'll talk about this later. It's led to the whole. It's one of many facets of the whole dating crisis. People aren't going to be dating, and they're not going to be getting married because they're so politically divided. And so, I think in the future, to answer your question, it's going to be unfortunately a lot more division until we at least have some sane voices on both sides, if you will, kind of come together and
Yeah.
rational people out.
And Julie, if you have any thank you, Nick. Julie, if you have any questions, like just interrupt me too. Um, so with the rise of like you said, women being more progressive, which I do 100% see that, how do you think that has influenced um I guess feminism or why do you think that is? Why are men leaning more towards, I guess, because I see it too. I do see a lot of younger men leaning more conservative. They're more traditional. They're becoming Catholic. Even if not Catholic, they're becoming Christian. But they are leaning more towards tradition. They want to have families, but why do you feel like women are moving in the complete opposite direction?
I think it's because men, it's our biology. Men and women are fundamentally different
Hmm.
creatures. We're both human, but we are different. And it's again like a common social lie of the left that wants to assume that we're just essentially the exact same thing and we should be thinking the exact same way. Women generally follow the dictates and the orders of somebody else. Women are also much more emotionally driven than men, which is one of the reasons why, like, one of the debates in Gen Z politics is the question of whether women should be voting or not, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm giving an answer on that subject. I'm just saying that's a debate because people are asking the question, like, should people who are highly emotional
Yeah.
cancel out a man's vote
Hmm.
and not be held to face the consequences of that. As an example, it's like men have to sign up for selective service, right, in the context of a potential war. But then you can have women who vote and cancel out their man's vote, and yet they don't have to go into selective service. So there's a bit of inconsistency there when it comes to quote unquote equality. But yeah, feminism is at the core of a lot of why women are this way. Feminism, I was thinking about this the other day. There's only really one instance that you see of feminism in all of sacred scripture. And because you two are Catholic, I'll tell the story because you won't know. This is the story of King Ahab and Queen Jezebel. Queen Jezebel, this is in the book of First Kings, if memory's right. Jezebel is a really ruthless queen, and she's pursuing after the prophet Elijah, and she wants to kill him. And what ends up taking place is Ahab is basically just a wuss. He's just not doing anything that he needs to be doing, and he's letting his wife steamroll him and control him and basically run the kingdom because he's just a figurehead, if you will. And feminism, I think, has led a lot of women to believe those things. It's not that women shouldn't deserve be treated with dignity. It's not that women don't have a voice in politics. It's nothing like that.
If
It's
anything,
this, and
Christianity is like the most pro women. Catholicism
Yes,
mhm.
is the most pro
it
women.
is.
Yeah, it is the most pro women because I mean, a lot of Catholics, of course, want to look at it from the perspective of Mary, but I mean, look at it from the perspective of just like um getting rid of the abuse of women in the context of prostitution and also, over sexualization. I mean, the reason it's interesting, women can't have it both ways. Secular women can't have a society that is addicted to pornography
Yeah.
and also a society that doesn't try to become stalkers toward women. It
Mm,
doesn't work because you're feeding a drug to the male population and then expecting them to all of a sudden be chased
mhm,
out of their bedroom. It makes no sense.
exactly. It's
Mhm.
difficult now. Everything is so hypersexualized. Everything is we're so desensitized to everything. Here in LA, I mean, Nick, you'll see like billboards, STD billboards, like advertising for like STD testing. You'll see OnlyFans models on billboards on the highway. It's sad, and it's sad that we've gone there, but I mean, this is the result of yeah, I don't know. I feel like in feminism, women wanting to become equal to men, like we're equal in value, yes, but we're completely different. And I feel like the result, unfortunately, of feminism has trying to be like at the same caliber as men when we're not supposed to. I don't want to be at the same caliber as men. I don't want to be doing the same thing that men are doing. I don't want to hold up that standard. Julie, do you have any thoughts?
And I'm the same way as you. I don't want to be the same as a man. I don't want to go to war, you know? Like Nick said, we are different. We were made different in God's image, and what, and that's exactly my next question for you, Nick. How do you think it's affecting like all of this? How is it affecting the church now? How does that impact the church?
Well, I mean, the Catholic Church right now is in a state of just abysmal crisis, and it's interesting to me
Wait, I
when
have a
I be
question. I have a follow-up question. How long do you think
yeah.
it's been in a crisis?
Oh, it's well, one could argue that the roots of the crisis begin much further than I'm going to say, but the crisis undoubtedly starts with the Second Vatican Council. No one can get away from that. It's an unpopular take in the context of Catholic apologetics, excuse me, and Catholic influencers, but it's the truth. Why?
I think
Because
a
numbers don't
lot of
lie.
Yeah, I think a lot of evil happened in the 60s. Like you see it everywhere. Like I think that was like the peak of the sexual revolution. Feminism. There was like so not just I don't want to say like just in the church, but like everywhere. I think the 60s was like a pivotal point in the US for the
Mhm.
culture, for the church, for everything. I don't know. It's like it always points to the 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The 60s were a major cultural revolution in the West, and it to a degree influenced the church. I mean, when you go and you read through the documents of the Second Vatican Council, the Council Fathers basically they didn't want to, let's put it this way, they didn't want to change doctrine.
Mhm.
But they wanted to change the, if you will, the front end of the store. They wanted to make the faith seem more palatable to modern man. They were very clear about that. And so they talk in their documents about very much so kind of like this very optimistic, sunshine, rosy world. Like, for instance, if people go and read the document Gaudium et Spes on, it's called On the Church in the World.
Mhm.
It's a long document. It paints the world in very rosy colors, which is funny because it's not gotten any better since the 1960s. And they honestly should know better because if you think about it, they're living in the 60s, not very far away from World War II, right? And so they're, in a society in which they should kind of know better. But in the Catholic context, I think if people don't consider the council, they're really missing out on the bigger picture. The Catholic Church, though, today, it's very much so in a state of crisis. I've been giving the stats recently on my show, and just to give you guys a couple stats, in the United States, 98% of self-identifying Catholics, 98% think contraception is okay and that the church should change their teaching on it. 98%, right? That means that by the traditional definition of heresy, 98% of Catholics in the United States would be considered heretics, at least before the council.
Yeah.
That doesn't get much better when it comes to weekly Mass attending Catholics. 72% of weekly Mass attending Catholics believe that contraception should be allowed. When polled and asked, do you want a church that changes its doctrine and is more open to the world, or do you want a church that's more traditional and exclusive? The vast majority of Catholics that were polled. This all comes from this year's survey by the Pew Research Center, by the way. The overwhelming consensus was we want a church that changes their teaching. And check this out. It's very true when it comes to Gen Z.
Mhm.
People like to think that Catholicism is one big TikTok reel of Latin masses and incense and women wearing veils. Like all the Catholic influencers out there want people to think that's what Catholicism is.
Mhm.
That's not your average parish at all. You go to your average parish, it's not the case. And the stats don't lie.
Mhm.
Gen Z Catholics want gay marriage. Gen Z Catholics want abortion. Gen Z Catholics want female ordination. That's what the stats say, the latest stats
Mhm.
off the track. So what Catholic influencers need to do is one, stop living in a rose-colored world, but two, stop like bashing evangelicals and
Mhm.
actually start addressing the issues in their own camp. Because it's like our Lord said, why are you judging your brother who has a speck in his eye when you have a log in your own? There's too much of an issue in our own house.
Yeah.
And like what you just said, Nick, right? Sorry, right? But in our own house, right? Like recently, what we saw recently with the homosexuals coming into St. Peter's Basilica, I didn't see any influencers talk about that part, right? I think I did just see it on your show, Nick, and it's so scandalous, right? Why aren't we speaking up about that kind of stuff in our church? That's my problem. We need to be speaking about these things.
Well, the reason it's not going to be talked about is that the New York Times did a study back maybe 2 years ago or so, and this is a recurring study that's been done a long time. That came out with the stats that says 75% of American clergy are homosexuals. 75% of Catholic American clergy are homosexuals. And of the remaining 25%, it's only around 3% that are willing to speak up about it, meaning that the remaining percentage knows it's happening and chooses not to talk about it, right? And we all know this to be the case. Why? Because look at the last 20 to 30 years of the abuse crisis,
Mhm.
especially in your guys' diocese, right? You guys had Cardinal Mahoney, who was in charge for a long time. I think he set out like $250 million worth of payouts when it came to the sex abuse scandals of little boys and little girls being abused by deacons and priests. And all of this being said, why does the Catholic social influencers not talk about it? I think they don't talk about it because many of them work for institutions
Mm,
which get lots of money from donors, and donors don't want to talk about these issues. The Vatican surely doesn't. It's just crazy to me, though, that you have Latin masses getting shut down,
yeah.
and 80% of the German hierarchy has already voted to change the church's teaching on homosexuality. And so it's like, why are you punishing little homeschool family in the middle of North Carolina over here,
Yeah.
but 80% of the of the cardinalship in Germany supports homosexuality and has actually voted to have the catechism changed. To me, your priorities are out of whack. And the fact that only trads are talking about this or people who are conservative, that's an issue.
Yeah, there's also was seeing, I don't know who, there's this person that I was watching, I think his name is Brian. He was also putting up some stats that that the average Catholic, or the average, no, he was giving stats on Ovis Nordo attending Catholics and traditional the TLM attending Catholics, and the vast majority of people that attended the TLM believed in the true presence of the Eucharist. I think that's also a huge problem, because if Catholics don't believe in the true presence of the Eucharist, I feel like that is going to set all, then they're going to believe in abortion, then they're going to do this, then they're going to believe in all these different liberal ideologies that come from not believing that Christ is present in the Eucharist. And it was literally stats like that. I think it was more than 30% of every week going Novus Ordo attending Catholics, I think it was 33% do not believe in the true presence. Whereas in the TLM, it was less than 1% of Catholics that attend weekly that do not believe in the true presence.
Yeah, those stats have been around. You're probably talking about my friend Brian Holdsworth. He's a
I
good
think
guy.
he has long hair, kind of.
Yeah, he's a
Oh,
good guy.
yeah.
He's
Yeah, I
he's a
like
friend of mine.
it.
But yeah, he's absolutely true. It's the reality of the situation is that the masses do affect the way that you do see
Yeah,
Catholic teaching. The
yeah.
problem though is this. I've been defending the TLM now for about 5 to 6 years. And to be honest, while of course some young people are interested in more traditional aesthetics, the
Mhm.
reality of the situation is the vast majority of the church has either A, not heard of the Latin Mass, or is B, just doesn't care. And that's the problem is like you guys have probably seen online through like, Reels and Instagram posts. Look, all of these young Catholic priests are super conservative. So all we need to do is wait. And then like in 20, 30 years, they'll be in power and we'll have this new Catholic golden age. The reality of the situation is, aside from the fact that that's true in America, that's not true everywhere else in the world. When
Mhm.
you look everywhere else in the world, the vast majority of young priests are progressive who are coming up. And let's be honest, how many young American priests are there going to be compared to the entire rest of the world?
Yeah,
It's not that much.
yeah.
The problem that Catholicism is having right now, and again, I'm not trying to blackpill people, but it's just the stark reality of the situation. The problem that Catholicism is facing at the moment is what I call online a credibility crisis.
Mhm.
It claims to be the one true church founded by Christ. It claims to be the church that never changes their teaching. It looks over at the evangelicals and says, ha ha ha, you guys change your teaching all the time. There's like 40,000 different groups of you. But yet,
And everything.
we don't even know what the church teaches on stuff like the death penalty anymore. Can divorced and remarried quote unquote Catholics receive communion anymore? Why is it that 98% of the church openly defies church teaching and there's no punishment? Meanwhile, if a priest, like the amount I know about 5 or 6 priests personally
Mhm.
in both dioceses in Texas and dioceses in other parts of America who were canceled specifically for going to their chanceries and saying, hey, this priest over here is molesting boys or is a practicing homosexual on the side. And they were canceled by the bishops. So
Uh-huh.
it's like, again, not to blackpill people, but like the TikTok real fantasy, it's just a fantasy. It doesn't actually exist.
Yeah. Wait, so I thought that, so you mentioned that a lot of them, the cardinals the cardinals are homosexual, or who did no clergy?
So all of the clergy in general. So when you take all of the clergy in general, 75%, according to the New York Times, is a practicing homosexual, and then the remaining 25%, a good chunk of them know about it, right? Know that that's going on with their brother priest, but refuse to talk about it. And again, I'm not trying to say that those 25% aren't, good people trying to do their best, but let's be honest, they're scared to bring it up
Yeah.
because if they did, they're probably going to get axed from their position. That's just the reality of the situation. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, I
And
thought,
then if you
sorry, go.
and I'm like, if you feel called to the priesthood, where do you go now? If this is what we have.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that the issue, of course, is that there's a lot of young guys right now. You guys probably see these memes online where it's like me and my boys if we can't find a wife, and everyone's at the seminary, right, doing these like beautiful solemn high masses and stuff. And I'm like, well, okay, aside from the fact that 98% of seminaries aren't going to be doing the TLM, so just put that aside. Um, they've the Vatican has basically regulated the Latin Mass to ghettos. It's the Ecclesia Dei Institute, so the Fraternity of St. Peter, Institute of Christ the King, you can have your parish,
Mhm.
though the bishop can cancel you if you want, but you can have your parish, and we won't touch your parish. All the diocesan TLMs are getting canceled. We've seen, in just the last few months, 40 Latin masses were shut down, 40 were shut down in Detroit. The remaining ones in North Carolina were all shut down in Charlottesville. They just canceled the one in Knoxville, Tennessee. They canceled the one in Monterey, California, right?
All
That
that.
bishop, that bishop is my new bishop, and I'm like, ha ha ha, yay. And so he's probably going to shut. I mean, even just in my own diocese, they canceled the main one at the cathedral in Austin, and then they regulated us where they're on the property in which we have the Latin Mass. There's the church, and then 50 feet away, there's the hall and we're banned from being in the church, but we can be in the hall as second class citizens. So again, it's funny to me that a lot of young guys want to go, and I'm not saying don't, but like a lot of young guys are like, oh, we're going to go into the seminary and we're going to change the system. We've been hearing that for 60 years that conservatives are going to infiltrate and change the system, but unfortunately, not much has happened.
Yeah. How do you think that's affecting, well, do you think that the church or even the church teachings can affect how couples see families, how couples see marriage? And do you think that has like any correlation to what the worldview is now, even like the Catholic worldview is of marriage?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I think that if you think about it, a lot of Catholics today, um, they feel kind of gaslit. And I feel because one of the first statements that was controversial about Pope Francis
Hmm.
was the famous breeding like rabbits conversation that he said. He was like, "Why are these Catholics families breeding like rabbits?" And that makes you scratch your head and you're like, "What's going on here? I don't understand." And then when you see Pope Leo, of course, he's not said anything to that degree. He seems to be fairly pro-family, so that's a good thing. But when you saw those things under Pope Francis, it really made people question. And so I think that, especially under the Pope Francis pontificate, goodness gracious, it was a nightmare because like there was a lot of us in the more right-wing conservative corner, like that were trying to fight for some sense of sanity. It's like, we're fighting a secular culture that hates Christ, but yet you don't feel like your own father has your back either
Yeah.
because he's saying these weird comments about you, especially his comments toward the Latin mass community saying that, we were backwardist. Like, as an example, a lot of people don't know this. Do you guys know the famous based statement that a lot of guys talk about with Pope Francis, where he talks about how there's too much, homosexuality going on in the Roman seminaries and how he drops the F slur for homosexuals? Do you guys remember that?
No,
Oh yeah,
no.
I
Yeah,
remember.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the thing was is that all these young guys were running around. They're like, "Oh, this is so base. It's so incredible." But I have a lot of friends who actually are in priestly ministry in Rome who worked with the Pope Francis pontificate. And because they're actual Italian speakers, they knew the context. They found out that actually, or they didn't find out, they publicized to the world. What he actually meant when he said that was young priests who like the cassocks and the surplices and all the fancy vestments, that's gay to Pope Francis. That was considered gay. That was considered weird. And so that's what he was calling. But it made sense because that same week that he made those comments, there was a homosexual seminarian that came up to him and he asked, "Should I continue in my discernment for the priesthood?" And Pope Francis told him, "Yes." I covered it on my show. It was one of my news shows. And so, yeah,
I
pretty wild. I'm not trying to black people here. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are like, "Dang, Nick's just really black pill." I'm just a realist. I live in the real world, and I think it's healthy at times to live in the real world.
Yeah, I think it's also like I feel like we have the right to criticize the church. We like yes, we have to submit to the church, we submit to the Pope, but we have the right to criticize it and speak up when sometimes we don't agree with things or something, not even just we don't agree with it, but when the church contradicts itself on its own teachings. I thought it was a rule that you cannot have homosexual feelings to enter the seminary. Is that true?
Yeah, it's in canon law, but the thing is, it's never enforced. That's the problem, is that there's a lot of people I've seen over the last 3 weeks
Hmm.
who are war converts, who are in the process of OCIA, or they had been converts for a couple of years, or maybe they were cradle Catholics. They've been saying on X and all other social media platforms that they're leaving the church, and they're talking about this because when you look at the last 3 weeks of comments from Pope Leo with the statement about the death penalty, with the blessing of ICE, and all other kinds of stuff, the immigration comments, you're seeing a lot of people say, okay, why believe in an institution that doesn't even enforce its own rules? Why believe in an institution that doesn't know what it believes? And so a lot of people are leaving.
Yeah.
And it's on a human level, it's somewhat understandable because psychologically, I mean, I think about it even in my own context. It's like psychologically, I'm not even allowed to be in my own parish because bad Latin mass. But I don't know what the church teaches on all of these things because it's jumping back and forth. What is going on, you know? And so it's quite sad.
Yeah. What
Nick and oh, sorry, Fran, you want to ask?
oh, go ahead, go ahead.
And I'm thinking, Nick, what do you, because recently, right, I posted something about this on my Instagram too, and then people were like, oh, I was talking about like the differences about Latin mass and like what I don't like Eucharistic ministers and stuff like that. Like you said, right? Things are not being enforced in the church anymore. Like you see that with, it wasn't Vatican II. Like it's the mass is still supposed to be ad orientem and stuff like that, and we're not following those rules.
Yeah, the math
But
is supposed to be in Latin. It's there's supposed to be a little bit of the vernacular. We're supposed to prioritize Gregorian chant, Ad Orientem, all, and it never encouraged, like it never said anything about receiving in the hand. It never said anything about like not kneeling and yeah, it's liturgical abuse.
Well, see, that's the thing. I know you guys have watched my friend Peter Kwasniewski's interview with Matt Fradd, and Peter's a good friend of mine. He's a coworker of mine over on Pelican Plus, and he's a really good guy. I've met him twice in person, and he's one of the most genuine, like, sweet guys you'll ever meet in life. He's a really good guy, and he's very smart. But this is an area where I guess maybe I would push back a bit on how he would describe some of the things. He gives a heavy emphasis on what Vatican II taught in its letter.
Hmm.
And I can, for the most part, agree with them. Vatican II never talked about communion on the hand. Vatican II never talked about basically completely stripping out the Mass and making something new. Didn't talk about those things. Didn't talk about facing the people. What it did talk about though was some updates in its mind, which included things like maybe let's have the Latin Mass, but let's have the readings in the vernacular. That's what most of the bishops said, because what most people don't know is that the bishops were surveyed before the council. What do you want to be seen in the context of the Mass discussion? And that's what the vast majority wanted. And that kind of makes sense, right? I'm not saying that I necessarily believe in that, but that would make sense as kind of like an organic development. It's like, okay, yeah, you have these parts in the vernacular so people can hear, but then the rest is the same. Well, after the council, of course, that wasn't the same because, Archbishop Bunini, who was in charge of both that Vatican document, Sacrosanctum Concilium, he became in charge of what became known as the Concilium team, and they crafted the new rite of Mass.
Oh, I think your mic went out.
we can't hear him.
Yeah.
We can't hear you, Nick. It's the devil, man.
See here.
There we go.
Okay, now it's back. Yeah.
You guys can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, that was peculiar. I didn't touch mute or anything, so that's odd. Okay, as I was saying, just let me know if it goes out again. Um, but as I was saying, the if people want to go and they want to learn what the guys who wrote the New Mass believed, I recommend a couple books for them. One of them is called it's called the what? Oh man, what is the book called? Sorry, I'm just having a brain blank. It's called The Problem of Liturgical Reform. And it's basically a work in which cites a ton of the citations of the Concilium Fathers. And by Catholic standards, a lot of these guys would have been considered heretics because they didn't believe in propitiatory sacrifice in the Mass. They didn't believe in all kinds of stuff that one would be required to believe when it comes to Catholic doctrine on it. But unfortunately, here's the thing. Here's what most Catholics need to grapple with. If you want to call, you can call them liturgical abuses all you want. The thing is, though, in the instructions for the new Mass and in the subsequent clarifications that have been given from Rome, like the indult under Pope Paul VI, communion in the hand is allowed. Eucharistic ministers is allowed. Altar girls is allowed. All these things are allowed by the Catholic Church. And so this is something that a lot of Catholics are having to grapple with is how is this institution, which claims to be, the great unchangeable institution, instituting all of these things that aren't helping, It doesn't mean that that falsifies Catholicism, but what it does mean is that there's a lot of rot, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And then so when it comes to, just because I want to jump back onto the topic of like families, how well let's do women. What can women do? Because I know, well, actually, how do you, we've gotten a lot of messages saying like the dating pool sucks. I can't find a Catholic man, or even men have gone comments saying like I can't find Catholic women. Let's start off first with women. Nick, what do you think women need to do? Let's talk about it as Catholics, right? As Catholics, what should women do to find a good husband? And then we can do the reverse.
Sure, let me do this. I'll help you guys out. You can clip this section moving on forward as like the courtship section because this will help. Catholic courtship in general, or let's just say courtship in general, right? Because this applies whether you're Catholic or not. Courtship in general, you have to ask yourself the question, what is the purpose of this? The
Mm,
purpose of courtship is to not have fun. That's not the primary purpose. That's a fun secondary, if you will, accident, but it's not a primary purpose. The primary purpose of courtship is to get married. It's to find your spouse and to get married. That's the purpose of it. We have to root ourselves in that sense because let's be honest, secular culture very much so wants to promote recreational dating.
yeah.
We date to have companionship. We date to have sex. We date to have fun. That's what a lot of people do. And honestly, I don't know if it's just the rural Texan in me, but it's just ridiculous. It looks nuts. I see all these videos that come out from LA all the time, and it's like I don't know how anybody stays like committed in that city. Like it's such a cesspool. What the heck is going on?
Yeah.
You know? And so yeah, it's nuts. But what can people do? First, they have to have that mentality that like, okay, the purpose of courtship is this. They also need to prepare themselves,
Mm.
both men and women, beforehand to see if they're ready. Because the purpose of courtship is not just to see if this person would be a good spouse, it's also to test them in that purpose. It's to test them and see would they make a good spouse or not? Do
What
they
would
have the
you,
sufficient?
oh
Go
yeah.
ahead.
I was gonna say, just what would you say like are three like main things that you think you would look for?
Well, that I would look for, I think for me, a lot of it comes down to first and foremost, does she have an actual substantial relationship with Christ?
Mhm.
But what that means actually is that she submits himself to his word.
Yeah.
She's reading the Bible and submits herself to his word. A lot of women don't do that, including a lot of Christian women. Let's be honest, Catholic ladies, how often do you read your Bible?
Mhm.
Not
Once a
as
week at
often as I
best?
should.
Drag us, Nick. Drag us.
You
Mhm.
guys, well, I was like, you guys hear it at mass,
Yeah.
and that's about it, right? And
Mhm.
what's kind of sad is that oftentimes the readings don't make any sense paired together. You're
Yeah.
like, what is the purpose of this thing? A lot of Catholic ladies are just sitting there scratching their heads. They're like, what is the purpose? Let's be honest, Catholic guys. Catholic guys don't read the Bible, right? They don't read the Bible at all. And it's an issue. It's an actual systemic problem.
Mm,
So I'm looking for a woman who reads the Bible and submits herself to Christ's word. By doing that, I don't even have to worry about most of the rest Because if she's submitting herself to Christ's word, then she's interested in being chaste
Yeah.
before marriage. She's interested in being modest before marriage. She's interested in honoring her future husband,
Mhm.
right, in marriage, which means, what does honoring mean? It means to respect him,
Mhm.
meaning that she's not going to go behind his back and cheat with somebody else. She's not also going to go and emotionally cheat, which
Yeah.
means that she's not going to be, cooped up with a bunch of guy friends, especially after they're in an exclusive relationship. Right? That's just that's common sense. I don't know how people do it in LA, but that's common sense everywhere else. It's like, yeah, once you're exclusive, time to snip the bud. It doesn't work that way.
Mhm.
And so by doing those things, it makes sense. If she respects you on an emotional level, that
Mhm.
means that she is going to not be nitpicking you. Like guys absolutely hate women who nag them. That's a,
Mhm.
that's a key for you ladies out there, is if you want to be the worst girlfriend and wife, nag your guy. But if you want to be the best one, approach him like a woman. Actually, St. Ignatius of Loyola had this saying. He said, "The devil is a woman." And people are like, "What? What does he mean by that?" What he means by this is the devil will come to you very softly, very seductively, and will kind of, woo you into doing something wrong,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Just like a woman who wants her husband to do something, good or bad. It can just be like, "Hey, honey, can you come over here? I need your help." She's acting very feminine. But if a woman acts like a man to a man, meaning that when the guy opens the door, she goes through the door and she's immediately like, "I have these 20 things I need you to do. How dare you not do this, that, and the other?" He's not going to listen.
Yeah.
He's not going to listen. So, ladies, if you want to have your way with a guy, be a woman.
Mhm.
Don't be a man.
Yeah.
Common sense
That's the sin
101.
of that's the sin of Eve, Nick, when you want to control everything for the
Well, it
girl
is, but
inside.
it's also just like part of it's not even so much control, it's just common sense. It's like if you're going to have a tough conversation, then approach it like a woman and don't be berating him like he's in a boardroom meeting. He's not going to appreciate it.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
we just started marriage prep. We had our first class of marriage prep, and the first class was communication. And our priest expressed to us that the reason why he thinks a lot of marriages fail and people end up saying, "Oh, well, we just weren't meant to be." It's because the woman doesn't respect the man, and because of that, the man withholds love. So women need to feel loved, and men need to be respected. And now we live in a world. Who cares about men? We don't need men. We hate men. They're all this and whatever. Women don't respect men, and because of that, they're not giving them the love that us women need.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's just Ephesians chapter 5. So I think going back to my original points, like if you have the idea that marriage is the end goal, you need to be testing the other person to see, are they worthy enough for this marriage? And so, ladies, you need to be asking yourself the questions like this. The guy that I'm dating, is he chaste? What I mean by chaste is not that he at one time struggled with something like pornography and then he's gotten clean. Because if you're looking for a guy that's never seen pornography, go date an Amish boy, because that's about it, right? You're not going to find it anywhere else. And it's a sad reality, but again, it's why we need social reform. But if he's striving to be chaste, right, with you, that means he's not trying to either A, have relations with you, or B, do anything that leads up to having relations with you,
Mhm.
right? And so, again, I don't know how loosey-goosey it is out there for the world, but it's like you don't want to, be doing makeout sessions.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. You don't want to be doing any type of foreplay. Absolutely not. And
Yeah.
honestly, the thing is this, is it's like if you call yourself a Christian, you're not even wanting to do these things because you want to honor Christ first. That should be the goal. That should be the natural tendency of your heart to not want to be doing these things. So if a guy is trying to lead you down into that, then don't do it. If a guy is not loving you on an emotional level, what I mean by that is not that he's not growing and learning how you need to be loved emotionally, but rather that, for instance, when you guys tell him something, and he goes and he takes that secret or that private conversation and he goes and tells all of his friends, right? That's a betrayal too, because that was spoken in confidence, right? So can you feel safe? I mean, let's be honest, ladies, that's what you want. Ladies just want to feel safe with a guy, safe physically, safe emotionally, safe mentally, safe spiritually. It's that simple. And so if a guy's taking care of himself, if he's taking care of himself physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and he's not going to use you, but he sees a woman as like a jewel and a treasure to keep, right? Then he's going to honor and he's going to respect you and he's going to love you, right? He's going to cherish that. And then vice
Mhm.
versa, women need to learn how to, communicate with their man, etc.
Yeah.
Nick, and we were talking about this, right? Like how everything has affected it. But there's this cross of singleness, like Fran was saying, right? Where do you even go to find a good man like this, that is practicing the faith, can lead you, and vice versa? Where can these men find these good women?
Well, I jokingly said with you guys earlier, but it's true. It's just like half of the dating crisis right now would be solved if men would just ask women on dates and women would say yes. That's honestly the big issue because let's be honest, a lot of guys have been asking and been getting rejected. And so they've just stopped asking. And they tell everybody, hey, just don't even bother asking because no one's going to say yes. And then it spreads around. All the men are like, yeah, let's not ask anymore. And now all the women are like, I'm seeing all these videos online where all these women are like, why are no guys approaching me anymore? And I'm like, well, you just spent the last 20 years saying that we were toxic for our race and for our gender. And so I guess you got what came to you. But in general, like where you find people, a lot of times it needs to be in the context of a place that would make sense. So in LA, I would say the first thing you need to do is leave because you're not going to find someone in that city that's going to help you. But once you've left LA, then go and find a good parish and at a good parish, hopefully you'll find good singles. The issue is though, nowadays, let's be honest, there's kind of a crisis in mentorship. Men aren't being mentored by their fathers and by older men in society because masculinity has been demonized, and women aren't being mentored by good women either. Right? St. Paul says a lot about this. He talks about I think this is Titus chapter 2. He says that young men need to treat older women like mothers and younger women like sisters in all chasteness and religion and things like that. So like the way that I'm supposed to treat any fellow young lady is like a sister, right? I need to honor and respect her and things like that. I need to treat older women like mothers. But St. Paul also says that older women need to teach younger women to be chaste, to be keepers at home, to be quiet, right? That's one of the things that he mentions. These are things that he emphasizes, but these aren't being taught today. They're not being taught by parish priests. They're not being taught by catechesis. And let's be honest, if Catholics aren't reading their Bible, they're not even going to know about this. And so they're just going to be taking the world's advice. They're going to be taking secular advice, and that never works.
Yeah. 100%. So I guess what advice would you, and you can just summarize kind of everything, but what would you say to those people that are looking to have a husband? Like it can be like, I don't know, you can summarize it in like 3 points, three main points for men and women. What would you say to them? What advice would you give them if they're looking for a good spouse, and looking to, I guess, maybe grow in their faith so that they have that spouse or can find it?
Yeah, I mean, the context of practical stuff to do, I mean, the first thing you always need to do is like check yourself and see if you are ready. And of course, there might be always some doubt, like, am I ready? Am I not ready? But there's some certain natural indicators. It's like for a guy, can you actually provide for a girl?
Yeah.
That's a hard one right now because of the society in which we live in. And so women need to, I think, have a little bit of sensitivity and recognize there's a difference between a guy who's working hard to provide for you and maybe you have to have a part-time second job because of this crazy economy. That's some level where a girl can respect that. There's a big difference between that and a guy who expects you to work full time and or a guy who doesn't work himself and expects you to do those things. That's just weird. That's just such nonsense in my mind, but I know those guys unfortunately exist.
Yeah.
So guys need to check themselves. Can I provide for her? Can I lead myself toward Christ? Of course, it's Christ who draws you, but in the sense of practicals, like, do I have my own spiritual life? Am I reading the scriptures on my own? Am I trying to live a moral life and a virtuous life on my own? If I'm doing that on my own, not so that I either A, earn my salvation or B, I'm doing this just to get ladies, right? Because there's weird guys who go and try to do that too. Um, if you have your own developed relationship, that's good. Am I chaste? Am I striving to be virtuous? Things like that. Am I emotionally ready? meaning can I control my emotions? I can control my anger. I can control my desires for physical pleasure. I can do those things. If you're able to realistically say yes, 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 as a guy, okay, you're probably ready to start courting, right? And getting to know people. Because again, like you don't want courtship to be super long. You want courtship to be ideally quicker because there's no need to drag things out. And then for ladies, asking questions like, let's be honest, do I even know how to cook? There's a lot of women out there who don't even know how
Yeah.
to cook,
Uh-huh.
right? Do I know how to cook? Do I know how to make bed with hospital corners? Right. A lot of women don't know how to do that either. They barely even make their beds,
Uh-huh.
right? Do I know how to keep the house clean?
Mhm.
Right. Am I in my own spiritual life? Again, kind of like the guys, am I by myself having a relationship with Christ and cultivating a relationship with Christ? Am I by myself striving to be more virtuous?
Mhm.
Those are good signs, right? If you're able to say yes, 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 I want children. Yes, I'm a person who maybe I've had practice as a nanny and I've taken care of other kids, or maybe I have lots of younger siblings and so I know how to take care of kids and I can control my own emotions to a degree much better. If you're saying yes, yes, yes for ladies, that's a good sign. But then after that, you have to go find each other. So men need to go and they need to ask the woman. They need to ask her out. And women need to say yes, right? Say yes if you're actually interested. Don't say yes if you feel sorry. Just give a polite no. Don't say yes if you're just trying to get something out of it, like, oh,
Cut off again. Yeah.
okay, I think I figured out what it is. I think it's my internet. That's what it is. Um, if women can stop saying yes to, selfish reasons, but say yes for good reasons, that would be good, right?
Mhm.
So go on dates with one another. And while on dates, ask good questions. I know a lot of people now, they don't even meet on like in person anymore. So many people meet online. I hate online dating. Online dating is a major problem in our society. You know why? Because it treats relationships just like Amazon. You see a profile, you see a description, and you swipe yes, i.e., I go to my checkout, right?
Mhm.
That's essentially what dating has become. It's become a big marketing scheme. Like it was brilliant, whoever came up with that. They're making lots of money, but it's not good for society because women go after the top 10% earners and leave 80, 90% of guys behind. And then even the top 10% earners, they don't all want a ton of women. A lot of them want one. And so there's a lot of women who are unhappy. So it's kind of like this question. Let me ask you about this question. Would you be willing, like, let's say if you were to get married, to marry a guy who only ever at max made $50,000 a year, but he loved you, worked super hard, right? And would love and work super hard for your kids. And yeah, maybe you can't live in LA because 50 grand means you're sleeping under a bridge, I guess, in LA. But if you were to move out and he was to work super hard, right, and all of that, would you say yes to that type of mentality?
Fran, you're muted. Oh,
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
I would say yes. And it's unfortunate because before I would have gone into, I think it also has to do with being in the faith. Before I reverted into my faith, oh my gosh, I would have said, heck no, I'm not doing that. Heck no, I don't want any of that. But now that I've reverted into my faith, like you see the true happiness. Like, no, true happiness is the family. True happiness is if you have a good partner that's able to maybe, I don't know, maybe not provide for you in every single way and you have to pick up a job or whatever, but loves you, respects you, is loyal to you, wants to be a good father, wants to raise a good kid. Like that's the true meaning of happiness. But women don't see that anymore. They just want money, they want bags, they want flights,
Yeah.
all
It's all secular mentality.
yeah.
Oh, it's just
Exactly.
narcissism.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Nick, I was gonna ask you too, like, because I feel like we don't talk about this enough, right? Because we have mostly girls watching us, and I saw a tweet yesterday. It's kind of viral. I don't know if you've seen it, but some guy was like, "I want this, this, and this in a wife," and it's like, well, she has to have less than 10 bodies, right? What do you say to like the women who have reverted back into their faith and they have a past life that is promiscuous, and they've been with a lot of men and now they're single, but now they want to live the right way? What are your, and be honest, even if it's gonna hurt them?
Yeah, I guess I would just want to approach it with some type of, pastoral sensitivity, if you will, just because it's like, yeah, I mean, everybody's a sinner. Everybody messes up, right? I mean, Romans is clear, one of the most famous Bible verses, right? For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, right? That's a reality that we all have to grapple with. And so, with that reality, though, unfortunately, sometimes comes the consequences. And so, it's it's maybe unfair to a lot of women, but it's true. It's like myself included amongst the majority of men, we want a woman who's a virgin, right, to be married to. It's not because we're like, you're not a virgin, therefore you're bad, right? But it's mostly because it's like for a man, the nature of man, of men in particular, is to give. The nature of women is to receive. Right. And so when a man's, or excuse me, when a woman who is the gatekeeper of human sexuality says yes to a man, she's not just saying yes to an experience. She's
Mhm.
saying yes to his own deep internal identity of self-giving, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And when a man knows that a woman has been opening up herself to all of these men,
Mhm.
that to the point in which human sexuality was just kind of trivial, it makes the man say, look, I don't think I can give my all, my very essence to this person because she's been with tons of people.
Yeah.
Of course, redemption can be found. And so I would say it's one of the sad consequences of this world. Like you are probably going to have a harder time finding a man because men are going to be a bit more picky, especially today. Because again, I mean, you guys remember this when we were all kids. Like it would have been shameful for somebody in, grade school or high school or something to have their nudes leaked or something, right? But now it's like people do that for money who are our age all the time and all over the place. And it's just nuts, And the reality is like many of those women are going to be moms one day and they just did this for money and for fame and for narcissism. Obviously, not all women who have slept with a ton of guys are in that same boat, but the idea is still the same, which is that um, you're going to have a harder time finding a guy. And it's totally normal for guys to want women who are virgins.
Mhm.
In the same
Yeah,
way that it's totally normal for women to want a guy who works hard for them.
yeah.
Exactly. I think it's
The
it's
re-
totally
yeah.
fair. It's totally
Go
fair.
ahead. Uh-huh. That's what I wanted to ask that because it's like 100% valid, right, Nick? Like I agree with what you're saying. And I asked that because a lot of the girls that, are watching us and follow us, they do ask questions like that because they haven't lived a perfect Catholic life their whole life, but it's more difficult. And when they do meet a man at church, it's like, well, are you a virgin? And like that question is gonna impact them in one way or another. And we need to also be honest with these men because I know some women lie because they want a husband, and it's just sad. It's sad all around because a woman craves love so much,
Mhm.
and but it's also like unfair to make the man the bad person, right? Oh, you don't want me because of my past. No, like I think it's 100% valid if a man wants a virgin. And I think a lot of the women what we see now, right? Maybe they came to the faith, to the knowledge of the faith a little bit older, like in their mid 20s, and now the men that they want, like there might be men in the parish that are in their mid 20s, but they want a younger woman like 18, 19. They're not really looking at them per se, and it's difficult. It's a difficult cross, but it's like you're saying, with those things that have happened in the past comes the consequence. And that's what I'm saying. We have to be in the reality of things. Maybe accept that as a cross. Maybe you're not meant to get married. Like God doesn't owe you marriage, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's uncomfortable for many, but like the only thing that God owes us is separation from Him in hell because of our sins. Like that's the only thing that God owes us. But the fact that He is a loving Father, and as Ephesians chapter 2 talks about how He's rich in mercy, He's rich in kindness, He wants to save mankind. He gives man many great gifts, including marriage, of course. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's totally normal for guys to want women who are younger than them.
Mhm.
And the idea behind that is not that they're a bunch of creeps, right, who are just interested in nefarious activity. The idea behind that is that oftentimes they're just wanting to have a lot of kids. Now, I will say this. I've heard stories from ladies I know who, like, if you're on a first date and the guy is just asking, "Are you a virgin?" That's probably a good sign that not gonna work out because I don't know. I would never ask that on a first date. That's just
Exactly.
nuts to like ask that as like an opening statement. What's your name? Are you a virgin? Like that's just really, really weird. But that still being the case, recognize that some of these things in their, basic sense are they're realistic expectations. Just like you ladies would want a guy who, actually puts forward an effort when it comes to job. And like this, guys want a woman who can join in with them and who's not been defiled by another man. But
Yeah.
like you ladies, let's be honest. You guys don't want a guy who has his identity fixated on you guys,
Mm,
meaning that he gets his sense of self-worth from you or being in a relationship with you, right? That guy is a wuss, right? He's not good. He's somebody who doesn't respect himself.
yep.
Like women always say they want confidence. And I remember one time when I was much younger, I was like, what does this mean when women say they want confidence? I don't know what this means because like they're not defining it. But what confidence I think means is that you're comfortable in who you are. You're comfortable in your own flesh. You're comfortable in your who you are as a person, with your strengths, your failings, and you actually have your own goal and mission outside of her.
Yep.
And then you can, after building something, you can invite a girl into that and say, come with me on this journey. Not that you, lady, are the journey, but you can come with me on the journey.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, what do you think, Fran?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's totally true. And I think that I don't know what I think women have a sense of reality, I think kind of messed up because of just gender roles, but also men too. Like we don't have men as leaders. We don't have men teaching men how to be men. We don't have women teaching women how to be women. And I think you saying, Nick, that women or that men should build something of their own and not have their identity in women too. I think that comes from not having a strong masculine figure in your life and you trying to find, I guess, your identity and yeah, your woman or your partner or whoever you want to refer to them as. But yeah, I think that that is the problem with women are not teaching women how to be women and men are not teaching men how to be men. And
Yeah.
then the courtship that ruins the marriage, that ruins how we see families, that ruins how we value marriage, that ruins how we value loyalty when it comes to building a nuclear family.
Absolutely. And I think it's something that everybody has to grapple with in their own way. But it's like to the guys out there, the guys out there need to recognize that women don't want guys who are directionless. Like the one of the big problems we have in society right now is that you have a ton of young military-aged men who are single, jobless, and directionless. That's
Mhm.
a big problem, right?
Yeah.
That's when stuff gets scary in society because political movements can form and bad stuff can happen. And maybe they do need to happen. I don't know, right? We'll have to see kind of what happens in society. But it's like for me as an example, I remember like I don't know, 2, 3 years ago, something like that. I was very much so kind of in that sphere. I remember I had a nasty breakup. I had a girl who I was dating who I thought was like, the love of my life. And she went and cheated on me with a guy that was twice her age, was a guy in his 40s, right? Really, really bad, crazy stuff. And I remember feeling super directionless. And it's like if you ever go through like a super hard breakup, girls and guys handle it differently. Girls kind of just have this hardcore, intense emotion all at once or in a short period of time, and then they're over, right? They have all their friends come over, they eat ice cream, they pull out the tissues, and then like in 3 days it's over, right? And you just move on with your life. Whereas guys, we bottle it all up. And so it was like a year of that intense emotion, but for like a year.
Mhm.
And I remember feeling super directionless and being like, what do I do with my life? Why? Because my problem at the time was I was putting all my identity in her. I was putting all of my self-worth in her. That was not right. And you need to grow up. That was the problem. I wasn't old enough. I wasn't ready, right? Even though I was legally old enough, I wasn't old enough, if you will.
Mhm.
I wasn't ready. I wasn't matured enough. But now it's like, look, I'm at the season of life where it's like, okay, I have a full-time job that makes over 6 figures a year. I have a political podcast that's launching, plus, some kind of up and coming companies in the works. I have my own spiritual life. I take care of myself. But you know what's crazy? I'm doing all of this now, and ironically, and I have a mission. Like my mission right now is very much so to see the United States of America like get restored. That's kind of Nick's goal, his mission. I've always had this mentality, and it's becoming more concrete now as I'm getting older. But what's crazy now is that I have all of this and like my desire for a wife, sure, while it's there, it's like super secondary to the point where it's just like, yeah, I kind of enjoy being single and just doing my thing.
Hmm.
Because not that a wife would hold me back or anything like that, but just the reality of if you make all your self-worth and everything in, I need to be in a relationship, that's just an idol,
Yeah.
you know, and
Mhm.
it's a problem. And I think probably women struggle with that a bit more than men. But if men struggle with that, that really means that they have no direction in life and they're just looking for love as this thing to solve their life. And guys, you can't do that. You have to have your own life. You have to have your own mission, and then you invite her into it.
Yeah. And women too. Yeah. Women can make an idol of it too. Like, oh, I want to get married. My family asks me like why I'm not married, why I don't have a boyfriend. And it's like that can 100% become an idol. And like you said, I think women are maybe feel it a little bit more. Obviously, we have like a time clock, right? We have a time
Mhm.
clock. I think we have a little bit more pressure when it comes to that. But I think it 100% can become an idol being in a relationship. And like you guys mentioned, like God does not owe us a relationship. He doesn't owe us marriage. He doesn't owe us anything like that. If we're making an idol out of it, that's on us.
Exactly. And we disappoint ourselves with those expectations, right? And like Our Lady of Fatima said, the last battle will be against the family, right, Nick? And I think it's too like it's hard to become a family. It's hard to make a family. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? Like
Sure.
it's hard to come together, find a spouse. It's difficult, but I like the same thing I was asking Nick right now. Okay, there's these girls that are not, virgins and stuff, but then there's also girls that have remained pure and they're older and they still cannot find a man. And they live in Texas or they're living like that, but a lot of these men are not handsome. That's what I hear. Like they're not handsome, they're not taking care of themselves. Like when you go to the mass, you're not. I don't know. They don't have a connection. What do you think about that, Nick? Like women that you know well, he doesn't look handsome or he's kind of weird. Like, what do you believe that there is some weird Catholic men out there, be
Oh
honest?
yeah, no, Catholic guys are the worst. Like that, like they like I say this as someone who now like on my show, I have a video that I'm gonna be releasing tomorrow, but like I've been I think unfortunately like doom pilling people too much about the drama in the church recently, but it's needed conversation still to have because again, I think a lot of Catholics put on rose-colored glasses. But for me, it's like I'm kind of just backing away from the whole Catholic sphere and I'm gonna be just doing aside from politics, I'm just going to be doing a lot of like Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox dialogue and discussion and things along that nature going forward. But Catholics at times can genuinely be the worst. And what I mean by that is not that I'm dissing individuals out there, but what I mean by this is that, especially the trad guys, look, if you're going to be a husband, a normal wife and a normal girl is not wanting a guy who thinks that the United States of America needs to be transformed by you and your friends into this glorious Catholic monarchy. Meanwhile, you don't work out and, all of this type of nonsense, right? That they don't want that. But the reality is that that's what a lot of trad guys do. And so I think for ladies who are inside of a sphere in which they can't find a husband and maybe in their general facility that's just the it's the clear sign that they need to branch out more, right? And they need to kind of get to know other individuals or go to different places, right? It makes
Yeah.
sense. I mean, we're in a massive country, so it's like if you're not catching fish over in this watering hole, you go to another watering hole.
Like I get why people do like those matchmaking um posts. I don't know if you've seen them, Nick, on
Oh
Instagram, but
yeah.
to me they're cringe because why aren't people going to different parishes? Why aren't you in the community more? It's where we've lost touch of talking to each other in person. And that I think that's why maybe for guys they're kind of awkward when they do talk to you, right? Because everything is online.
Well, that's definitely a factor. But part of it's just they don't know how to talk to women. That's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
thing. But also women don't know how to be talked to either. And so like it's genuinely not that complicated. It's like guys don't approach women when they're with their friends. It never works. That's a bad idea. You're outnumbered. Get to know her as a friend first while simultaneously not getting friends zoned. And how you do that is if you can make a woman laugh, then you've pretty much won the most of the most of the war. If she actually is genuinely laughing at what you're saying, then she's having a good time. And then if there's some natural chemistry, I mean, even guys can pick up on this, then just ask her out. It doesn't have to be like this very poetic 17th century thing. I remember I'll tell a funny story about me. I'll tell a self-deprecating story about me. When I was younger and I would ask girls out, it was so funny. I would basically, because I'm a very meticulous thinker, I would I would give them like a 5 minute spiel about all of their good qualities that I see. Guys, don't do that. That's not good. But I would give them qualities of all the stuff that they of how they were great, and then my thought process of why I'm wanting to ask them out, and then I'd ask them out, and they would all say yes. But it's like you don't do that. What was wrong with me? What was wrong with me is I didn't know what I was doing, because no one taught me. But it doesn't need to be that complicated. It just needs to be like you and her are having a good time, and you just say like, "Hey, I think you're really beautiful. You want to go on a date and go and do X, Y, and Z." Just simple English communication. If she says no, her loss, move on, right? And that's a big thing. If I think a guy has reached the stage of confidence when if he does get rejected, it doesn't really affect him as much anymore. Like for instance, if I get rejected now and I ask a girl out, she rejects me. For like a day it sucks, but it is what it is, and you move on the next day, right?
Mhm.
That's just how it is. There's a difference between that and like a guy who completely falls apart or like blames the girl as like this horrible person a second after. You know what I'm talking about? There's all those guys out there who
Yeah.
like ask the girl out, she says no, maybe she says no politely, and he's like, "Well, I wouldn't date you anyway because of this, that, and the other," and he says all these mean things about her, right? Like there's those are boys, they're not actual men. And so yeah, it's just like I think, Guy, you've reached it if you can get rejected and you're just like, it's just one experience. Like it's a sucky experience, sure, but it's like getting a flat tire. It's like it is what it is. You just need to go change the tire. So
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Brand, do you have another question?
No, I just wanted to ask him as like a closing, I don't know, is that appropriate? Like a closing statement. I guess, Nick, what would you say? And I think we can use this to close it out. But what would you say to young people that want to take the or so that we can, because I guess the whole topic of this was like the destruction of the nuclear family and taking marriage seriously and having wanting to have a family. What would you say to young people so that we can bring back the nuclear family, so that we can bring back tradition, so that we can bring back traditional values? What would you say to young people so that they can help out in society to bring those traditional values back?
yeah, it's a big question. I think you have to just start from a place of humility and recognize that you're not all that.
Mhm.
I think that's a big thing. Like like
Yeah.
we live in an
I deserve this, I deserve that
Hmm.
yeah,
society.
like we live in an incredibly narcissistic age. We
Mhm.
live in an incredibly narcissistic period of human civilization where we're all so hyper individualistic. This is something I rail on my show all the time. We're hyper individualistic. We all see ourselves as like our own islands. We're makers of our own destiny. We go do this, that, and the other. And all good things should somehow like attract themselves to me. I deserve a good spouse. I deserve to have good kids. I deserve to have a good
Yeah.
job. It's like, no, you don't. You don't deserve any of these things. For
Yeah.
me, the way I think about life is all that I am and all that I could achieve were given to me not only by God, but by my ancestors. My ancestors, I'm what you call a heritage American. It's like I can trace my ancestry back to not only the founding, but to Plymouth Rock and all the way over to England. And it's like my roots are deep in the United States of America. And
Mhm.
my ancestors built the greatest civilization known to man, the greatest civilization that everybody wants to come to, right? And so, therefore, what am I going to do to make it better? Well, I need to honor their memory by not only preserving the civilization, but also by passing down the principles that they believed in, the work ethic that they believed in. So it's
Mhm.
like, guys, you even if the job market is horrible out there, right? Maybe it's worth you moving, but it's like you have to work hard. You have to be hard workers. You have to build something that's worth living and dying for. And ladies, you have to recognize that just because you're attractive and feminine doesn't mean that you're owed everything in civilization, right? You have to work for it too. You have to work for it in the sense of if I'm going to be the quote trad wife, then you need to be the girl who's actually willing to embrace traditional values, which
Mhm.
means like, hey, if you want the guy to be the chivalrous knight, that doesn't then you want the guy to be the chivalrous knight? Delete your Instagram account right now then. Prove it. You know,
Yeah.
if like that's the reality of it. Like if you're serious about taking tradition seriously, then be traditional,
Mhm.
right? And it's uncomfortable for many because again, it's like Instagram is oftentimes used as a narcissistic like self temple. I build this temple to myself. Everyone come and like it.
Mhm.
And it's like, all right, that's just weird. So just be traditional, right? Keep Christ the
Mhm.
center of your life, work hard, and try to build something that's worth lasting because those are the only things that do matter. And then you'll be able to pass on something beautiful to your children and to your children's children,
Mhm.
right? And instead of relying on, hordes and hordes and hordes of, foreigners to come into the country and then take over what your ancestors built.
Yep. Thank you, Nick, for talking with us and giving us a little bit of information, that we don't, because we are slow, but Fran is more invested in these. You guys, I know I didn't talk to Nick like Fran was because at the first half, I'm like lost in the sauce. But Nick is funny. I know you see his banjo there, but ladies, all the single ladies, Nick is single too. Okay, look at him, and he's funny. Okay, I have conversations with Nick, and he cracks me up. And you would say, how can nerdy Nick talk to Julie with her getaways and all that? But he's cool. He's a cool guy. Thank you, Nick. And where can everybody find you at?
You can find me over at the Traditional Thomist YouTube channel, and then you can find me over on Instagram at I think it's just Nick Cavazos, and then on X at Nick capital T Cavazos.
Mhm.
And then if individuals are interested in my really uncensored comments, they can go over to pelicanplus.com, where if you guys don't know what pelicanplus.com, it's like kind of the Catholic version of the Daily Wire minus the Zionism that's starting over there. And so if they're wanting to catch me in my more uncouth state, they can definitely find me over there as well. And people can also look for me, I think in maybe about a month's time here on YouTube and on Rumble and on Odyssey with the American Nationalist podcast.
Okay, we will link that for you guys below. Thank you, Nick, so much. And
Thank you.
hopefully we'll talk soon. Okay, friends. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Bye.